Hello, everyone. So today I wanted to go live here and really talk about cortisol dysregulation issues. And this applies high cortisol, low cortisol, general cortisol dysregulation. If you haven't seen a lot of my content, please go see it where I talk more about why it almost doesn't matter if you have high or low cortisol. It's really about cortisol regulation. And specifically the topic I want to cover around this is when it comes to healing cortisol dysregulation issues, and I want to talk about what I like to call the stress bucket. And this is why it can be very challenging to heal cortisol issues, especially if you're only trying to use supplements, you're only trying to use nutrition, like you're only trying to biohack cortisol. It can be very challenging to heal. And look, like I've been there. I spent years trying to heal my own cortisol levels. And I had high cortisol levels at some point. I had low, I had cortisol dysregulation. My cortisol was a straight line at one point. Literally all day it was just the same. And I experienced all of the issues, all of the lower belly bloat, the puffy face, the sleep issues, the energy issues, the chronic fatigue, the cravings, like all of these things. And I was put on all of the supplements. I mean, my biggest protocol, I think I was on anywhere between like 22 to 28 supplements just for cortisol dysregulation. And it didn't work, I'll tell you that. So when we think about cortisol is a stress hormone, and cortisol has its time and place. Cortisol is good, it's necessary. It should be higher at some points in the day, specifically earlier in the day, and should drop later in the day to help us sleep. And where cortisol dysregulation issues really come into play is when we're under chronic stress. And let's talk about chronic stress. Chronic stress can be a lot of things. And as I go along here, feel free to comment if you have questions about anything that I'm talking about, just by the way. Give examples of the supplements. Any supplement you can think of that people recommend for cortisol regulation, any adaptogenic mushrooms, all the adrenal support, adrenal cocktails, everything under the sun for sleep, magnesium, melatonin, any sleep supplement out there, full spectrum hemp oil, like everything. I mean, vitamin C, like high dose vitamin C, glutathione, like mass nutrients, B5, B6 individually, all of the things. I did all of the things. And they just don't work. They can be tools, don't get me wrong, but they just don't work. And this is because when we've got chronic cortisol issues, our body is under too much stress. And if we think about stress as a bucket, which is where the stress bucket comes into play here, we've got daily stressors, just things that happen in our daily life. And we don't have a lot of control over that. So like those are there and those are never going away. Family, friends, work, personal issues going on, like that stuff is at the bottom of the bucket, and you don't have any ability or limited availability to be able to change a lot of that. And so that's just always there. Then we look at nutrition. Is your nutrition supporting your body? Is it causing more stress? It could go either way. It could, sometimes the answer could be yes, sometimes the answer could be no. Then we look at, what about hydration? What about movement? What about lifestyle things? What about trauma? What about your history of trauma? We know early childhood trauma plays a huge role in your body's ability to manage inflammation, to manage chronic stress, and we just know that is a thing. I mean, the studies out there are so good and so clear that early childhood trauma plays such a big role in our physical bodies, let alone other things like our nervous system. And so it can be really challenging, whether it's, and I say childhood trauma just because there's some more research around this, but I 100% throw in other trauma as an adult because obviously that plays a really big role here. There's just less studies on this in particular. So we add trauma in there, and trauma is often going to get us in a state of fight, flight, and or freeze. And, if we think about fight, we think about aggression. This can be verbal, this can be physical, this can be just like chronic irritability is really common with this fight response. If we think about flight, we think about hiding, we think about shutting down, dissociating from our body, not actively being a part of our body, sometimes not actively being a part of our lives. Distraction can also be very much in flight. And then we have freeze. And this is a really big one. And this is where oftentimes, and there's some connection, some overlap here with flight. But this is really a like total dissociation from your life. And you are just constantly distracting, constantly just going through the motions. And this is a trauma response. Like it's not necessarily you, and it's not necessarily something that you can like passively control. It's something that you're stuck in, and it's about breaking this cycle to get out of this. And that is a whole other video here. That's a whole other video. If people can, I feel like people still control me. That's very challenging. I see you in that, and it's very challenging to get out of that. And that's definitely going to contribute to a lot of chronic stress. I'm sure that is maybe part of what you're feeling here. And I see you in that, and I've been there, and it's very challenging. And so this trauma piece of this bucket, that might be the rest of your bucket. For some people it is, for other people it's not. But if you're in these chronic states of stress, in these chronic states from trauma, and or actively living through this trauma right now, which I also, I've been there. I know many people are that. We work with a lot of people in our practice who are like this. But then you have that layer of you're just constantly being exposed to this trauma. And it's so challenging, and it can be so challenging to break the cycle, to get out of it. Maybe you can't get out of it right now. Fighting with family. That's a huge piece. That's a huge stressor, and my heart goes out to you. And of course your bucket's already pretty darn full, and of course you're gonna have some cortisol dysregulation issues. And with chronic stress also comes a lot of internal issues as well. I'd say two of the most common ones are going to be nutrient deficiencies. Just your body's not getting enough nutrients, and that you could be eating super well, by the way, and you can still have nutrient deficiencies. It's a matter of what you're eating, and it's also very hard to get all of your nutrients all in one day. It can be very, very challenging, but it's also, are you absorbing all of those? And if we're under a chronic state of stress, our body goes through certain nutrients, and there's a lot of them, a lot faster. Your B vitamins, vitamin C, sodium, potassium, are some of the really, really big ones. And vitamin D. And vitamin D, honestly, once again, this is a whole other topic, but it may not actually be a vitamin D deficiency. Magnesium deficiency contributes to vitamin D deficiency in so many cases, not 100% of the time, but in many, many cases here. So many nutrient deficiencies, and that is stressful on the body. So now we add another layer of nutrient deficiencies on the body. The other big thing that comes with chronic stress is lowered stomach acid production. Once again, this is just something that happens by default, because when we're under chronic stress, our natural stomach acid production drops, which means you're not digesting your food, you're not killing all of the pathogens that you're ingesting. And we all ingest pathogens, just by the way, it's okay, we all do. We have barriers set up to handle this, but they also can go down if we're under this chronic state of stress. And now we really leave ourselves open to gut overgrowth issues. Bacteria, yeast, fungus, and or parasites. That is very stressful on the body. If you can't digest your food, if you have pathogens in your body, many pathogens release toxins into your body. That's going to be hugely, hugely stressful. So how much room do we have left in your bucket for you to handle anything else that comes your way? And so now your bucket is continuously overflowing here. And of course, no supplement's going to help you. Once again, it may support temporarily, but it's not going to fix your problem. Are you going to have to stay on the supplement forever? I'm not a big believer in having to stay on supplements forever. A multivitamin might be the exception here for many people. But yeah, it's going to be very, very challenging to heal cortisol levels until you can take some of that stress out of your bucket. And before I dive into like how we actually do that, I know I missed a couple of comments here. So I'm just gonna scroll up here and look at these comments here. Could taking adrenal support be bad if I don't know if you have high or low cortisol? So most adrenal support pills are usually going to increase cortisol in the morning and or decrease cortisol in the evening. Just by and large, that's what most of these are designed to do, because that's how our cortisol should naturally flow. Yes, it is valuable information to know. And the reason I say is I think of, if someone has high cortisol in the morning, taking something that's going to further increase that cortisol in the morning might not feel very good, and may not be supportive of your body because your body's already producing higher than normal. Same thing, like if your cortisol is really low in the evening, let's say, and you take something to lower it even more to help you sleep, you might sleep pretty good, but you also might wake up and feel like a zombie, like feel really heavy. It might be really challenging to get up in the morning, like a lot of brain fog, kind of all that kind of stuff. So now if you're taking adaptogens, my answer is a little bit different. So if you're taking like ashwagandha, rhodiola, some of these more stereotypical adaptogens, any of the adaptogenic mushrooms, like cordyceps is very supportive. Chaga for more gut, turkey tail for immune, but all of this is supportive of the adrenals here. Reishi, for the evening, like these things won't be necessarily harmful unless you react. And I only say that because I actually react to ashwagandha. And it's not super common, but I've seen more than a handful of cases of people reacting to ashwagandha. So that's the only one where I'm sometimes a little iffy. You'll know if you respond not the best to ashwagandha. So it'll feel very activating for you versus like relaxing and calming. And it will not, like, it'll almost feel like too much coffee kind of thing, like inside of you. So adaptogens in generally a pretty safe bet here. Just add in one thing at a time. Give it a couple weeks, but if you notice a pretty immediate reaction and the reaction isn't the desired reaction, maybe reconsider it. Maybe talk to someone. We do free consults, so if you ever need someone to talk to, certainly we are here. So that's definitely an option. So the next one here, critically low vitamin D on 50,000. I'm assuming IUs. Recently started magnesium oxide. So yes, for some people, we absolutely do need to support the vitamin D and get that up. Caution with magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is not a very absorbable form of magnesium for the body. It is also a stool softener. I don't know your situation. I don't know what your bowel movement situation is, but I never recommend magnesium oxide for reference. If we are using magnesium as a stool softener, magnesium citrate is the way I will typically go versus magnesium oxide. Citrate is more absorbable by the body. Oxide is just not a great form of magnesium. So I would say you can finish up the bottle that you have, but I wouldn't recommend buying another bottle. There are many other forms of magnesium that are going to be much more supportive of your body that I would recommend here. But magnesium, if you've got cortisol dysregulation, chronic stress issues, is most often going to be not a terrible idea because there's a lot of magnesium that's used when we're under a lot of chronic stress here. Been on a healing journey for a while, working on metacognition and positive thoughts to reduce stress. Yes, this is great. I'm going to dive into this and to kind of like the nervous system regulation piece in just a moment here, in which case I will chat more about this, but Amazing, great. I see you. Keep going with it. You are doing the work that you need to do, and that's so, so, so great. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss any other comments. Okay, amazing. So when we have this stress bucket here, so it's really like the way we approach this in our practice is, how do we take things out of this stress bucket? And so this kind of goes into two main categories. One is the physical body. What does the physical body need to be supported here? And what are some things that we can address to take some of those stressors out of that bucket for the physical body itself? And so this looks like nutrition. And this isn't, we're not big into elimination diets. We're not big into like strict eating. It's about like, how do we fuel and feed our body? You'll see on a lot of our content, like I talk about protein intake a lot. Protein is a required nutrient. It's so important, and it's also so under consumed, especially by women. So protein is a great resource to start to add. We do like to add things. It tends to be a little bit less stressful on the body. So adding in a little extra protein, adding in some extra veggies, adding in some extra water if that's what we need. And then looking at these big stressors, and we usually look at blood work here. So, we're looking at, what kind of nutrient deficiencies are we looking at? Do we have stomach acid production issues? Do we have any gut overgrowth issues? Do we have toxin overload issues? Like, what is your liver doing? The liver plays a really big role in all of this because the liver is responsible for getting out anything excess in our body. And that includes cortisol. So if you are producing excess cortisol, your liver is working overtime to get all of that excess out. Hormone imbalances, sex hormone imbalances are really common also with cortisol dysregulation issues. And if we are producing excess hormones, I think about women who have PCOS, like your body's not filtering out all of your excess hormones, estrogen dominance, like for men and for women, like your body's not getting that out, and that's very stressful on your liver, which can also impact your thyroid, because the thyroid and the liver go hand in hand too. The thyroid's converting the inactive form of thyroid hormone into the active form, T4 to T3. It's not the only place where that happens, but is the biggest place where that happens. And then we think of, if we have pathogens that we have in our body, what about just things we're being exposed to? I mean, we're all exposed to toxins. And then we look at personal care products as well. Like, what kind of level are we dealing with here? And once again, our body's designed to be able to handle this given the right situation. But if you're under a ton of chronic stress, is your body able to keep up? And especially if you've got that lower stomach acid level, your body's probably not keeping up because it's not going through and actually being able to kill all of those pathogens and toxins that are coming into your body. And so now your defense mechanisms are down. And so now your liver is working overtime to really try and keep up with this. Your liver also plays a really big role in blood sugar regulation. So if you're getting like big spikes of energy and then crashes, if you get hangry, like if you get headaches, if you go too long without eating, those are all signs of blood sugar dysregulation issues. And the liver plays a big role here. And once again, if your liver is just doing a lot of work here, and it's really stressed, then it's just going to be a huge challenge for your body to be able to keep up. So those are like some of the big things that we really look at. Fasting often does not help because it's also a stressor on the body. Now, this is not to say that fasting is never useful, but if you're under a lot of chronic stress and you've got a lot of the symptoms that I've just described here, no, I do not recommend fasting. I recommend starting your day eating a really solid breakfast, good proteins, good fats, maybe some starchier carbs within about 30 to 60 minutes of waking up. And that's going to be very supportive of cortisol production, very supportive of blood sugar regulation, and cause less stress. Celsius, are we talking about the energy drink, the Celsius? I'm going to assume that we are. I mean, look, take caffeine for what it is. I drink caffeine. I don't think it's a terrible thing. I think there are better forms than others. Celsius isn't the worst of all of the energy drinks. I would make sure you're eating beforehand, and that will be more supportive of just keeping your cortisol levels and insulin levels in a more stable place. Adaptogens that also detox. Not really. I would say not directly. If I had to maybe pick one that would be most supportive, I'd probably go with cordyceps. Cordyceps are an adaptogenic mushroom. And what they do is they help to deliver oxygen, increased oxygen to the body. Very supportive of the lungs in particular, but also it does carry oxygen everywhere. And so increased oxygen to the body can help with healing. So that if I had to pick one, once again, I wouldn't say it's directly related, but indirectly, I think that could be a good option. So now we've got the physical body here. Now let's look at the mental and emotional body here. And this is why I'm so big on nervous system regulation when it comes to cortisol healing and cortisol regulation, because the two have to go hand in hand. Because we have to take, once again, we have to take some stuff out of this stress bucket. And regulating your nervous system, which let's talk about what this means here real quick. So regulating your nervous systems is helping your body manage stress, essentially, at the most basic and foundational. It's much more complicated than that, but it's really helping your body manage stress. And this can look like working through physical things and getting physical things out of the body, like mental and emotional things out of the body. We think about like breath work, we think about somatic practices, somatic experiencing, trauma releasing exercises. These are, you can look at all of these things on YouTube, and there's tons and tons of amazing resources there. But these are getting things out of the physical body. Once again, if you've never heard of this, I recommend probably the most tangible resource I've ever found is The Body Keeps the Score. It's an amazing book, and it talks about exactly this. There are also, I don't know if you can see, but I have a book called The Emotion Code on my bookshelf. I'm a huge fan of that one as well. It dives into this topic as well. But this is about releasing emotions, energies, traumas that are stored in the body, and this will help to decrease that stress inside of the body, but also to help regulate your nervous system, because that's a huge piece of this cortisol, and especially in healing and keeping your cortisol in a really good spot long term. And so we think about getting this stuff out of the body. The other part of this is really retraining our brain out of these trauma patterns. If we're stuck in this chronic state of, let's say, freeze, just because I've done a couple of videos here recently on this. So if we're living almost like an out-of-body experience, and we're watching our lives, we're constantly on our phones, constantly distracting, and we're just like, we feel frozen, almost frozen in time from being able to live our lives and to be able to make changes and incorporate new habits, and we can't get there. Part of that's probably some traumas that we're holding on to, but we also have these patterns that we're living out on a daily, hourly, minute by minute kind of basis here that's keeping us stuck in this pattern. And so we need to train our brain into a new pattern, and this pattern of safety, of security, of we are safe just because we are here, of we are not in these chronic states of fight, flight, or freeze, in this chronic state of stress. Like, we can handle it, and we have to train our brain out of that. And it's way easier said than done. I've done this with so many things with myself, but also with so many clients, and we've seen absolutely incredible results as a part of this. But it does take some time. Your brain's probably been running the same program for quite some time, if I had to guess. And so changing that, it takes some work. And it doesn't take a lot of work, but it takes some intention and focus in order to be able to do that. So those are really the keys. And then that really brings down all of that load kind of in your stress bucket. And then now that your stress bucket isn't so high, your overall general well-being and kind of a mental emotional state is one of more peace, of more more just stability. And so when things come up in your day-to-day life, you can handle it. And yeah, you still might get overwhelmed. Like you still might get stressed. Like it's a normal part of the human experience of just like day-to-day life, but you're able to handle it. And maybe you feel that cortisol level going up, but it's going to come back to where it should because that stress bucket isn't quite as full here, and your body's just physical, mental, and emotional bodies are able to handle just day-to-day life a whole lot better. And that's really what we look at, and that's how we address these cortisol issues. Once again, as someone who's been there, I tried all the things. So if I'm gonna do a couple more comments here before I have to go. But if you need additional help with this, we offer free consults. There is a link in our bio to book a free consult. It's 30 minutes. It's usually with me. If it's not with me, it's with my head practitioner, Shannon, and we will dive into all of this completely for free. Certainly, if you want to chat about working together, we would love to talk about that. But really, this is just an opportunity. Like, we will answer questions for you. Like, we will support. We will look at blood tests if you want. We will look at functional tests if you've had them done. You do not need any of that. We will just chat with you. We will talk about symptoms, talk about your history a little bit here, and then give you some of our thoughts and advice. And once again, if we think it's a good fit, if you want to talk about working together, yeah, we'd love to do that as well. So let me go through a couple of these comments here real quick here. I'm so glad that was helpful. Cortisol manager supplements. Yeah, cortisol manager is a good one. If it's one of the few ones that we will actually use in our practice pretty consistently to help with sleep, because sleep is so important in managing cortisol and just helping everything. So yeah, cortisol manager is great. I will say it should not be a forever thing. Temporarily, like while you're doing some of this bigger work, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing tool. It's something that we will recommend to have some people, not all of our clients, keep on hand just whenever big stressors are coming up and you start to notice some of those sleep struggles start, like, yeah, let's take it for a few days. Let's take it for a week. Like, let's just kind of have it and use it as a tool to do that. So yeah, so glad this is right up your alley. So I'm so excited to share this with you. What tests are needed? Just a blood draw. Can a test show? Yeah, so this is a great question. So blood testing for cortisol is not a great option. And the reason why is because the way cortisol works throughout the day is you have cortisol here. As soon as you wake up, about 30 minutes later, your cortisol should spike. And then gradually throughout the day, it should decrease. And if you're only testing at one point in the day, I mean, you get a point in the day, but what are you doing for the rest of the day? What's your body doing for the rest of the day? And that's a more important answer that we need to know. So an all-day salivary test is the gold standard in kind of the holistic health functional medicine world. It's what we use if we're going to recommend testing for it, because it actually gives us a good picture, and it's going to show us like, what are you actually doing? I mean, I've literally seen everything come up on these test results. I've seen a normal curve but high, a normal curve but low. I've seen an inverse curve where you start really low and you end up really high. I've also, once again, I had literally a straight line come up in one of my own testing. So all of this, it's just really important information. So you can get a blood test. Not the best, not the most accurate information, but certainly, yeah, I mean, it's going to be there. So yeah, it's an option, but not generally recommended. So if you have any other questions, comment on any of our content, feel free to send us a direct message. I am actively in our direct messages. And once again, if you want to book a free consult, we would love to chat with you. There is a link in our bio to do that. Once again, no pressure to buy anything. Sometimes we don't even talk about that, but really just here to support as much as we can. And I hope you guys all have an amazing day.